Hi, this is Sergeant Betsy Brandner Smith with the National Police Association, and this is the National Police Association podcast. I have with me a local guest today, which is so much fun because Arizona law enforcement is very near and dear to my heart because I'm a resident, and we have a very robust police dog system in this state. And so I wanted you to meet the president of, I got to make sure I say this right, the Arizona Law Enforcement Canine Association, because they are doing some great work. And I brought you the president, who is also a working cop with a working police dog. And we're going to talk about all things canine today. Tony Sanborn, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Betsy. Appreciate you having me on.
So I have to ask you what I ask everybody who's been in law enforcement. Tony, why'd you become a cop?
Oh, I mean, there's always the answer you'd give during an oral board of, I want to help my community. I want to be able to give back, but
It's for
and
the
that is true,
children,
of
right?
course.
All of that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, and all that is true. But the same reason I went to Canine is the same reason I became a cop. It was the idea of just going out and finding bad guys. Find those violent folks that shouldn't be amongst us. And I just had this conversation the other day, actually, where I was explaining to someone that was asking about some of the things I've experienced in my career and what effect that had. I said, it was never really a question because it always felt like a calling. I think most of your listeners who are law enforcement would probably say the same, especially if they did a full career. But it really felt like it was always what you were supposed to do. And certainly having family in law enforcement made me think about it early on in my life, watching my uncle and then knowing that my dad had done that. And it made me think of that as a career, but I always felt like it was what I was going to do and was going to be my career. Never really questioned it. I started working that direction by doing, cadet programs even when I was like 17 years old. So
I love it. I love it. I was a police explorer and all that stuff and a dispatcher. And as I continue to tell people, we never have the same day twice. And it's such a great career. I'm really hopeful now in 2025 and beyond that we are going to see, and I think we are seeing a resurgence
yeah.
in a lot of areas of this country in interest in becoming a police officer, because it's a really fun job. It's a great job. And I think we're approaching that time where most people love us again, right?
Oh, I agree. Yeah, no, we've definitely seen the pendulum go back the other direction. I'm fortunate. I work in the city of Scottsdale. We've always had great support, but being a part of our SWAT team, it takes us to do missions outside of Scottsdale into other neighborhoods, and obviously in this position, knowing a lot of our brothers and sisters that work in other cities, and they don't have the same experience. But yeah, I was just thinking as you were saying that, Canine has really become sort of like an ambassador to the law enforcement profession because you see the uniform and not everybody wants to approach and talk and get to know a cop. But when they see that dog, they're like, man, I got to know about that dog. So they'll come up and start a conversation. And at all our meetings, we have these discussions where like, hey guys, remember what you are to the community. You're that conduit. And so what you say really goes a long way because they're going to communicate with our canine cops a lot. Not to mention we do demos all the time where we're reaching out to kids and like community leaders, but that random interaction is so important. And we become a big recruiting tool, I think, for most of our agencies, and we have seen a resurgence. And we just talked retirement right before this, and it's come up a lot lately for all of us. Do you really want to leave right now? Are you not having the time of your life? I mean, this is a really fun job, so why leave if you're having so much fun, if you enjoy what you do and it pays good? And that's become sort of my speech to all these folks we talk to about this profession. Like, it's a fun job. That's why you see us all going 20 years, sometimes 30 years. And when they're meeting canine guys, they're saying that we're smiling, having a good time, sort of like our event we just had, where we're out there having fun, playing with our dogs, and showing that this could be a really cool career.
So I want to talk about this event that you just had because, first of all, when we talk about police recruitment, what are the two or three things you always see in any department's recruitment video? The canines, the SWAT, the helicopter, the horses, the rifles, all that cool stuff. And which you get to do almost all of that, except I don't think you fly a helicopter, right?
No helicopters. I wish we had it at the event. They came out and they were hanging out, static display. That would be a cool job, and I'd love doing that. But you're right. Yeah, we do end up as part of that recruiting tool. And that's the other big piece of this event. We've become a massive recruiting tool for every agency that's invited. We give them booths because we have the space, and they can stand there at their booth and say, yeah, did you enjoy what you saw there in that competition hall? Like, one day you could be Canine. Just sign up right here and get some more information. And so we've heard really good feedback from our agencies about how much follow-up they get, and then recruits that they get down the road after we have our events.
So talk about this event that you just had, the largest one, one
In
of
the
the
nation.
largest ones that you've had. What's it called? And what did you guys do?
Yeah, so it's the Desert Dog Police Canine Trials and Public Safety Expo. So kind of a mouthful, but it really states what it's become. It was the 22nd annual, and so we had a lot of improvement this year over the last couple of years. We're making the event as exciting as we can make it because it's a competition, and all of our canine guys are very competitive, and that's sort of how the roots of this event started. It actually started about 25 years ago, but there were several years it didn't happen. So that's why it was the 22nd annual. But it was some canine guys hanging out in Phoenix, and I bet my dog's better than yours. And then it became a bunch of families that came out to Phoenix High School, to their football field, and watched a little one-day competition. And that blossomed into the canine trials. We went to a couple of spring training facilities. Now we've moved to Westworld, very large event center in Scottsdale. And we have this new mission of not just having our competition, which is great. It's exciting. The public wants to see what we do. And we're showing off not just our dogs, but we're showing off our officer skills too. So we'll set up some shooting drills with some munitions to show how talented our officers are at shooting, at lethal engagements. We'll show the physicality of how physically fit our officers are. The very first event on Saturday morning was extreme tag with your canine. So it was a full sprint chasing the decoy with dogs and muzzle, and they were trying to basically get away. But then we'll also show off driving skills. We were able to do like some pursuit driving, set up a mock course with a side by side with lights and sirens. So that's all entertaining for the crowd. But at the same time, it does show off just how talented and effective our canine teams can be. But then you go into the Public Safety Expo, and that hits our mission for Alika, which is our mission is TEAS: train, equip, educate, and support. Training will always be our number one. We raise money, and we're a 501(c)(3), but we do it to further that mission of making sure no canine handler is ever told for budgetary reasons they can't train, because it's just unacceptable. So our training is free to our members, and it's some of the best in the country. But the education portion is really for the public. We found that when you mentioned that little pendulum that we've had with support, and we found that a lot of that was rooted in just ignorance, with people not really knowing a lot about what we do. And at this day and age of information at your fingertips, it really doesn't make any sense for us to hide the ball anymore. We have policies, we have procedures, we have tactics, we have things that we do that we can share with the public. The technology advances we're making now, there's no secret there. They want to know, how are we utilizing robots? How are we utilizing cameras? What is AI doing for us? So this expo has all of that on display. We bring those folks out, and they're there in the North Hall. They have a booth set up, and the public makes their rounds, talking to each and every one of these officers and detectives that are in these units and finding out what we're doing and how we do it. Yeah, it's interesting to them if they want to like pursue it as a career potentially, but certainly our citizens are learning a lot about what we do. And then the next time they go watch a video on the news with a fisheye lens from your body cam that only shows so much, they'll have a whole new perspective when they're watching, because they said, I talked to a canine handler and I know why they use police dogs. I think I got an idea of why he did that. It doesn't look great on camera, sounds even worse, but the citizen will have their own personal knowledge, and they don't have to be influenced by whatever they may be hearing from the newscaster or whatever talking head is explaining what they're watching on that video. So it's a huge part of our mission, and we get massive support across the board from our agencies for having that expo portion. And we get such good turnout because we don't want to be the Scottsdale show, right? It is every agency out there bringing their specialized equipment and all their leaders present doing, town hall talks essentially, and answering questions for the public in that North Hall as well.
We saw, you can go back to 2014 to the Ferguson riots. And then of course the George Floyd riots of 2020, which you dealt with in Scottsdale. Mm-hmm. And we see these little snippets on social media or on the news of canines, supposedly being deployed just to harass people and this and that. Talk about the reality of using a canine for crowd control.
Yeah, and it's funny because you see those procedures and those tactics, and again, no more hiding the ball. The public needs to know that our position on the skirmish line has changed. If you find a canine up on the skirmish line, it's likely because something has gone very wrong. The days of the imagery of the South and civil rights era of having a dog out the end of a leash with the big teeth coming out, that's kind of gone by the wayside. We've really become more part of this rapid response plan where we arrive in armor along with impact munitions, potentially more of a lethal force option, because some area of that civil unrest has become um, beyond a protest. And they've asked for that rapid response team to move into that area and start dispersing gas, impact munitions, basically move that group at all costs because it's become more dangerous than just your typical civil unrest. So it's rare to see us out there on the front lines anymore. If we do, it's because we're either just arriving or a flank has been, taken over. And I'm not going to get into the tactics too much. It's not my expertise of running our mobile field force units. But I know in Scottsdale, for example, we don't work on the skirmish line anymore. It used to be if a protester broke the skirmish line, they were fair game for us. But we really don't operate in that space anymore. It's really more of a rapid deployment team.
So I want to talk about your dogs personally. How long have you been a canine handler? How many dogs have you had? Brag about your partners a little.
So 16 years in canine. This is my third dog. He's going to retire at the first part of this next coming year. Outstanding career, great working dog. I mean, if I could clone him, I would. I was very fortunate to have him these last 8 years. So I'll work. My next dog will likely be my last. So that'll take me into retirement, God willing. But yeah, the brag part, that's kind of where that competition part comes from is, he's a stellar dog. I never get to compete with him because I'm running the event. But he would have been outstanding as a competitor. And it's a labor of love, right? Like we train, and some people want to know, well, what's the upkeep like? How do you get a canine into the canine unit? Well, you get it from a breeder or a vendor. And sometimes they have some foundational training, sometimes not. The market is so competitive right now for good working dogs. Some of these vendors are saying, here, he's green. I had no time to train him. Well, what's the discount? Well, there is none, same price. So have at it. And that dog will be sold in a heartbeat. So you get their basic training done, and that usually takes anywhere from 6 to 10 weeks, depending on which academy you go to and how much training they have. But then it's a labor of love after that. You're going to do something every day with that dog because it's a working breed and they need to be worked. They don't get to they're not plug and play. They'll terrorize you and become a liability if you don't work them, because that's how their mind is. But then the physicality of it as well. And there's one day out of every week that almost every unit makes their training day. So they'll spend, and that's just maintenance. And that's a 10-hour shift spent training the dog all together. Everybody gets together, puts together scenarios, drills, making sure the dog is meeting the proficiency. And then of course we have to recertify every year through some sort of a nationally recognized group. Like NPCA would be an example, National Police Canine Association. The legal standard for it is they want to know that the Supreme Court says the dog has to be proven to be trained and reliable. And you could do that just through your training logs, but it's a huge benefit if you're going to go into a courtroom that you also do an annual certification to prove that training and reliability is there.
And that's a big part of it is you have to, as a canine handler, because a police canine, a bite, especially a bite dog, it's a tool, and it's a tool that can be misused. And so you have to be able to prove, not just to your boss, but to a court of law, that this dog did the right thing, is proficient, and that you are proficient, the handler, right?
Correct. Yeah, it's both. When we're tested, it's both. And yeah, it's not just a tool, it's a living, breathing, thinking tool. So it can operate on its own. And so one of the unique things about being a canine, part of that selection process for a handler, is you're not only thinking about whatever critical incident you're involved in as far as yourself, but you're also thinking for your dog at the same time. And so it's that extra added stress and multitasking as you're trying to, make decisions in split seconds. And so, yeah, the liability is high. Canine unit liability is high. And you ran that program for a while. Second highest liability behind the SWAT team. People get hurt typically when we're deploying. And so we have to make sure that how we deploy And the way the dog is being utilized falls within our policies, falls within the law, and just general good, common sense discretion and decisions.
Talk a minute about, and this has always been a debate, when we talk about a police canine, there will be situations, lethal situations where somebody will say, well, why didn't they just send the dog in?
Mm.
Which is send the dog in to get shot, basically, which happens.
Yeah.
But talk about what goes into that kind of decision making, because again, you love your dog, people love their dogs, but that dog also represents a significant financial uh, uh, asset to the agency, right? Talk about that kind of difficult decision making.
Yeah, you hit on a couple of really critical points. Really, I mean, you talk about yes, the dog is expensive. Does it go into our tactical decision making? No. We utilize the canine because they bring back tactical advantage to us, right? We're always working in a environment where we are reactive. When we utilize canine, we now have made the suspect have to change his plan. Now he's the one thinking. We are the action, and action is faster than reaction. So it gives us that split second advantage back to us as the canine works ahead of us and goes into danger prior to us. Now, decision making wise, and use the word love, right? We fight that so hard. We fight so hard not to fall in love with them, because ultimately that is a tool that exists on the use of force continuum. Canine exists as an intermediate weapon. And so I don't fall in love with my taser. I don't worry about my taser being broken, right? I need to be able to utilize that tool in a split second and have no hesitation because of any sort of personal connection to it. And so is that possible? We're human, right? And that dog is with us more than our family, because he's at home with us and then he goes to work with us. So it's hard not to kind of love him. But at the same time, we have to always remember that is a tool. He saves people's lives, not just ours, the officers, which is obvious how he does that, but he also saves a suspect's life. So when a canine is effectively utilized, we don't have to bump up on the use of force continuum. We stay at intermediate because the canine was effective. Well, as you know, the only other level above it would be deadly force, right? So if we have effective canine deployment, we're saving the life of the suspect because we didn't have to jump to the next level because something in the intermediate realm was ineffective. So it's always a battle for us to make sure we're remembering exactly what that dog is, and that there will come a time, as long as we, God willing, and making good decisions, that dog will retire and become ours. But until then, he's going to go into harm's way, and we can't hesitate when he's the proper tool for the job. He needs to be utilized. And I've had a dog that was shot on deployment, and I was able to save his life. And I was very fortunate that we had done enough training. Well, because he was shot and it wasn't, it was no small wound. It ended up being in his carotid artery. And so he bled. It was 75% of his total blood volume got put back into him. He spent 4 hours fighting for his life. And that's just a testament to how tough this breed is, because he did pull through, and had a great retired life. Didn't go back to work. Actually made it back to work, but then retired because he had laryngeal paralysis because he was shot in the neck, but we didn't find out until it got hot. So he made it back to work. Great story. Then retired, became more like my wife's dog, stayed home, and lived a great retired life, but would rather have worked for sure. But in that moment, it was still, we can't put the dog intentionally into harm's way. He's not bulletproof. As an Alika president and knowing our mission, we buy bulletproof vests for dogs. We love what they can potentially do for them. We know the reality is the coverage of that vest is only in certain areas. And so dogs still get shot wearing bulletproof vests, and they still die in the line of duty.
Just like cops.
Just like cops. And we know that the canines that are on our memorial down at the state capitol, we can point at each name and tell the story of, yeah, that dog died in the line of duty, but you know how many cops he saved? Because all of our tactics changed. We realized that the suspect was actually armed, and so we didn't make entry. It wasn't one of us going through that door. Those officers went home to their families. Canine didn't have a family. He didn't have a wife that was waiting on him to come home. He wasn't a provider. So they sacrificed themselves for us, and we will always honor them if they end up giving the ultimate sacrifice. But that is their job, to save lives. Ours, the citizens, other officers, and the suspects.
Now, we in law enforcement we've made this transition over the last, I'd say 20, 25 years, from primarily German Shepherds. And again, I grew up with Rin Tin Tin and all that stuff on TV.
Mm.
But now we've really transitioned to especially in the United States, we see primarily Malinois, although, we do see some Dutch Shepherds, some German Shepherds. Talk about a little bit about what you prefer and the things that you like and don't like about those breeds.
Okay. All right. Well, then prepare yourself in the comment section for some of the hate mail now, because,
I
you
know,
know,
because it's very personal. This is I just have to say this is along the lines. This question is like, why do you like your Glock?
yeah.
And not your Smith and Wesson? Why do you like your 9mm, your 9mm as opposed to your 45? All that. I always have to ask this because everybody has very specific thoughts on this.
Yeah, they do. And you're right. The unofficially, I think about 15 years ago, maybe 20 now, um, it was kind of determined that the Malinois had taken over from the German Shepherd as the primary working breed. Now, on paper, they're a better investment as a piece of equipment that the city owns and has to maintain. The Malinois is an extremely durable breed, so you're going to get more working life out of that dog. You're also putting less money into it in the form of arthritis medication and potential surgeries, because we know the German Shepherd had some issues, right? The breed itself had issues with hip dysplasia, arthritis. And so it's a very physical job for a dog, a lot of up and down out of the car and hitting suspects in the bite suit and in real life. And so on paper, it makes sense why a Malinois would be the preferred breed. But if you ask guys who run the dogs, you got guys that still love their German Shepherds. But generally speaking, and I like to throw a lot of emphasis on generally speaking, because you find variations within the breed, but you're going to find that Malinois, and this is hard to argue, are traditionally a higher energy breed. And if you can take all that energy and you can harness it, focus it in one direction, man, it's like an unstoppable force. It's an incredibly effective tool. Whereas German Shepherds, so we like to use the numbers like 80% prey, 20% defense as our Malinois. And that's kind of what we're looking for. German Shepherds, you might see more like a 60-40 prey to defense. What that means to your viewers is prey drive is that hunt drive, that desire to just go get the prey, and they will stop at nothing. That defense drive is really built more on self-preservation. Some people call it smart. Like you look at a German Shepherd and go, he's smarter. Well, yeah, in a way, he's just got a little higher defense. He has a little more concern for his own well-being, which is not necessarily what we want in the law enforcement world. I'll make decisions for the dog when it comes to his safety. I'm going to factor in everything about whether or not he could or could not be utilized here. Will he get hurt? Is it, and I'll make those decisions. I just need to know if I point him in a direction and I say, go that way, find bad guy and bite, that he's going to do it. I can't have, let's say, a German Shepherd who's maybe a little more in that balanced range, air quotes, of prey to defense, take a moment to stop and think, ooh, there's a bear armored vehicle that's loud. There's an LRAD is somebody's yelling into that. There's flashbangs going off in the back, and there's windows being, broken out and by the SWAT team members and yelling going on. In all truth, like a wolf would look at that situation and go, no pride for me. This is going to get me hurt. I'm not going that way. That's how they continue to live and hunt and stay in the fight. Whereas our Malinois just go, no problem. You tell me there's someone to bite that way, let's go. There's smoke pouring out of the windows, and they're like, yeah, go time. Once they've seen it and they know there's a treat, there's a reward back there, they're going. And so we like that, and so that's why you saw that breed really take off, because once you got to figure out how to harness all that energy and all that prey drive, man, what an incredible working dog, but still plenty of great. So let's, speak. Here's to the German Shepherd lovers. Plenty of great German Shepherds still out there working and doing great police work. So
now, these are not the only two breeds, and bite work is not the only thing that a police canine does. Talk for just a minute about some of the other. We were talking about this off the air. There's bomb dogs, there's tracking dogs, there's drug dogs, there's just fill people in on what kind of dogs you have in the competition and as a member of your association.
Yeah, you talk about an expanded mission. Yeah, we're really kind of all inclusive now. So You mentioned the detection specialty dogs, right? Most agencies want to run a dual purpose dog. So you get a Malinois or a Shepherd or a Dutch Shepherd, and you'll get them trained up on patrol work. You'll find and bite bad guys, locate evidence. Then the detection side, you can choose, what does your agency need? Do we need a narcotics dog right now? Do we need a bomb dog right now? City of Scottsdale, for example, we have a lot of large public events like Waste Management Phoenix Open and Barrett Jackson. And so we have a high need for bomb dogs. So we have 4 in our city. And then when you get into the single purpose world of just detection, we're looking for those dogs that just have an extremely high play drive. The breed really doesn't matter. It could be anything. We could have a dog, there's a famous canine handler that I say famous. If he listens to this, he'd laugh. Mark Green retired out of Phoenix PD, and he was sort of a guru in the world of narcotics detection dogs. And he used to love to brag because he went down to the Humane Society and found some dog that had one eye going this direction and one ear that was up and the other ear that was down and just scraggly hair, goofy looking. Who knows? He was 1% of everything. And he had just an outrageous play drive. And so he turned that dog into a really, really killer narcotics detection dog. Goofy looking guy, but great detection dog because he had high play drive. But that expanded mission for us, for our organization, just this past year, we added our therapy dogs to our membership because they need training as well. And therapy dogs have become a huge, huge advancement in the world of law enforcement for our school resource officers. So you have now our therapy dogs getting the representation they need and reaching out to different agencies and showing them how these programs work, showing all the success we've had with these different programs going into the schools. Speaking to some of our school resource officers, they'll say it was a game changer. They would work in their office and do their best to reach out to some of the young, high school students and see what they could do to, address any issues they were having and get moderate responses. They showed up and started having those therapy dogs, these sweet, cuddly little fluffy things that everybody wants to hug. And they said, man, everybody was coming to their office, wanted to pet the dog. Some were having anxiety attacks. Some were shutting down. Some were depressed. They'd spend 20, 30 minutes in their office, talk about whatever was going on, speak to the officer, form a personal relationship and a bond. The officer needed to do police work at that point. They'd obviously do it. But in some cases, the student just felt better after the interaction and be able to go back to school and finish out their day. So, dogs have that power and we need to use that more often. That is a place where the times are really changing.
Yeah,
So
there's
there's a lot
actually
more of that.
science behind that. The
100%.
our release of cortisol when we're looking at the dog and the dog's looking at us and all that. And I'm so glad you brought up therapy dogs because they're also good for us, right? For the cops.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, and they'll come out to, critical incidents and hang out. We've had a police crisis intervention service in Scottsdale for many years now. One of the first canine programs within PCIS in the country, became sort of a template for others to follow. And they'd show up to every scene and they'd be out there and they'd have the dog, and the dog would just kind of sense that stress and work around the officers while they were waiting for their opportunity to be interviewed or whatever it may be. And yeah, just as you said, the science of it, the way the cortisol gets released and the way that stress hormone just starts to come down a little bit. And yeah, very effective tool and great as we see now this change happening amongst our youth as the generations go on. As you look at our high school students, with whatever those stressors may be that are adding to that. But the dog has been great. The canines in the schools has been an amazing program. So we're really going to push that hard through our organization because that's what we do. We're going to find money. We're going to find training. We're going to make these guys better. We're going to make the programs expand. We're going to, provide guidance to any agencies that want to start a therapy dog program. That's really part of our mission now too.
Tony, talk about what Alika needs from the public and how people can support them.
Yeah. So the needs, well, we're a 501c3. So we're a nonprofit and we put the non in nonprofit. We scrape by. We get amazing corporate support. We've developed a great corporate partnership with a few different companies. Circle K primarily has been amazing. The Grand Canyon division is the most profitable in all of Circle K Global. And they found us and said, well, we really love what you guys are doing. They found us about 8 years ago. So we love what you're doing. We love to support it. And every year they've gotten more and more behind us, and in the form of money and any support they could give in any other way. So they're a fantastic organization. They help keep the lights on for us for sure. But our mission is expanding and we're not going to stop. So we're always looking for donations from the public. We're looking for ways to expand that training, make our training better. If we're able to train our officers more, if we're able to get more of them into the trainings, because we have limits right now based on funds, then we're going to save more lives. And I can't think of a more valuable mission than that. But the equipment, the life-saving equipment that we purchase, whether it be agencies that just aren't as well funded, we can get them simple stuff: leashes, harnesses, hot and pops. The dog doesn't die in the car in the hot Arizona summer. Bulletproof vests for the dogs to make sure they're safe. But we can go beyond that, right? We can purchase the actual dog for them. A lot of agencies reach out because they want to start a program or expand their program. Well, if they have the resources there in place to do it, well, then we'll support that. We'll find the funds and we'll get their police dog paid for, and maybe even beyond that. But the education we talked about, but then the overall support, the things that we're doing in the community on a daily basis, and the way we support our officers just in aftercare when canines become retired. If a handler reaches out to us and is having an issue with care or maintenance for the dog, like, they deserve a good retired life, because a lot of our public probably doesn't realize that the responsibility of the dog is signed over to the handler after retirement. There's no retirement plan for the dogs. That is on the handler and his family. And so after many years of work, you can imagine there's some vet bills that go into that. And so, well, they deserve a good retired life. And so if they need support in that way, we'll do that. So that's where our mission really is focused. Funds are huge. We got plans right now to start to reach out to the state of Arizona and see if we can get more support, considering we're doing so much training of our own law enforcement officers here, our own government employees. So we're working towards that. And so when you talk about what do we need, support in that way, if the time comes that we want to maybe have a bill that gets through the state legislature, we'd love for the public to support that, because it doesn't have to be always monetary. It could just be that you're explaining to your congressperson or the way you vote that you'd love to see the police dogs be more supported.
Where can people find the association, Tony?
Our website, Arizona Law Enforcement Canine Association .com, and then we also have a pretty robust Instagram. So I think our Facebook hasn't been updated in a while, but our Instagram is fun, especially now with all the videos coming in from the canine trials this past weekend. There's some good fun stuff in there. So go to both of those locations, and you can find all the information about us, who we are, how to contact us if you want to reach out. But also, obviously, that donate button is in there as well, which is huge for us.
Absolutely. Tony Sanborn, we cannot thank you enough for taking time out to talk to our audience about police canines and all the amazing things that they do and all the great things that Alika is doing for them, not just in the state of Arizona, but in the United States. Thanks so much. And if you'd like more information about the National Police Association, you can visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Every day, the brave men and women of law enforcement put their lives on the line to keep us safe. But they need our help to continue their mission. Activist politicians, progressive prosecutors, the ACLU, and the rest of the anti-police forces receive millions in donations from extremist pro-criminal elements like George Soros and woke corporations. The National Police Association is fighting them in courts around the country, including the United States Supreme Court, defending officers who are being attacked for doing their jobs. Additionally, the National Police Association works year-round to pass tough-on-crime legislation to put and keep criminals behind bars. Consider going to nationalpolice.org and donating to keep us in the fight. Together we can win. That is nationalpolice.org.